Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
Hey, what's cracking, everybody? Happy Wednesday and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Connor with you today. Remo getting a few days off. Shout out to our pal Benji Rothman, who's getting married on a Wednesday, which is hilarious, but we won't even get into that. Remo going to be away for a couple days. And a big thanks to Andrew Z, who's helping us behind the scenes make the show happen today. And I know I'm already getting heat in the chat. Son of Dirk, you should be on my side. You won the marble race. Speaking of technology, so I'm thinking that Huss is fighting with the technology. Little restart, check a couple things, and we're good to go. Don't worry about it. All right, we got a fun show today, though. I mean, listen, I'm looking forward to talking to Connor, who has had a big last 24 hours. We'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, Nathan Rourke coming back to the CFL, starting on Sunday against the Bombers. What the heck? Matt Baker, our pal from the BC Lions, formerly TSN 1040, is going to jump on. We'll get the vibe around the Lions, which I'm sure did a complete 180 after losing 3 straight games, including that humiliating shutout here in Winnipeg. Now all of a sudden, it's all systems go for the Lions as they've got their stud phenom quarterback back while Vernon Adams gets healthy again. Mike McIntyre is going to jump on. We'll get to a little bit of Jets off season. We'll certainly talk about the big news in the National Hockey League, those dual offer sheets, and we'll hit that a little bit more and bring in the boss man himself, Dustin Nielsen. I know Dusty's going to want to get to some CFL talk, but I'm interested to have you all hear how the reaction to the Oilers offseason, which was an A++ about 2 weeks ago, now not so much, as they might lose one or both of their top young players in the organization. So it's going to be a real fun one. We'll get to the Coolbet lines a little later on, maybe even squeeze in a little NFL futures talk with Connor when we get to the Coolbet lines later on. Did just finish up the lock shop, got ready for the FedEx St. Jude with Pat Gregoire and, of course, Dustin Nielsen. And Dusty will come on around 2:30 on today's show. Welcome to everybody in chat. Great to have you all with us. And thanks again for everyone listening on the podcast for making us a part of your day. Of course, I also want to thank the great sponsors of WST, including Garage Living Winnipeg. And of course, our pal Pat Canugan, Garage Living Winnipeg, have been powering CFL 110 all week. I think this one's been our biggest episode so far. Great downloads. If you haven't seen it already, go to wherever you get Winnipeg Sports Talk and download CFL 110 and give us a sub there. And a lot of interest. A lot of people want to talk about Nathan Rourke. So that is up as well on the WST YouTube channel. Also want to thank Coolbet, Princess Auto, Rolly's Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, F Apparel and Wallace & Wallace, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, the Beer Can, along with Next Door and Hoagie Boys, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend, and, of course, our Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp coming up later on today as well. All right, let's get Connor in here and welcome him to the program. What's going on, my friend? How are you? Great to have you back on the show.
I think I'm in here. I'm having some camera issues behind the scenes here, but technology, we're fighting it. I'm doing great, having a great week. The fish are back in town, big homestand, ready to go. Glad to be back on the big show and filling in for Remus, who's just slacking off this week.
Yeah, days. Far from it. And listen, I'll give Remus and Andrew behind the scenes credit. I mean, we run a pretty short bench here, and there's a lot that goes into it. When I'm not here, it's not a big deal. You jump in, you guys do a great job. It's no big deal. There's a lot that goes in when Michael's not here. So anyways, appreciate the work behind the scenes, just so that we can keep the streak going of making sure. Only once in 3.5 years have we've not had a show, and that's when, we were on the way to the draft and we got completely screwed. Not by us, but by the airlines. So that one was out of our control. This is going to be a good one. Hey, 2 things. First of all, I mentioned that CFL 110 is up on the WST channel. We also have a brand new WST deep dive with Connor Hrabchak and Liz Hood. Checked it out this morning. Good stuff. Started off with Colby Barlow And this one, Connor, and you can tease it and let people know what they'll be checking out when they go to the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel to watch it out. A deep dive on Brad Lambert, and I would suggest that this one's even more, shall we say, topical, because I think there's a lot more likelihood that we might be seeing Brad Lambert in a Jet jersey this year than Colby Barlow. But tee it up as to what's waiting when they finish up the big show and head over and see what else content is available.
Yeah, the WST deep dives, we've done 2 episodes. The first one you said Barlow, the second one Lambert, and they've been so much fun to research, to put together. I've learned so much about those 2 players in that process. And the Colby Barlow one was funny because we spent about 15, 17 minutes on his strengths and weaknesses, and then maybe talked for 5 minutes about what to watch for going forward. He's probably going back to the Owen Sound attack. He's gonna score a ton of goals. Like, you kind of know what's happening there. Brad Lambert, it's like what to watch for with Brad Lambert is very different. It's he might be the 2C this year. He might be a few things, and he might be going back to the Moose. You're not really sure, right? So there's a lot that could happen with Brad Lambert's season, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. But no, I learned a ton. Strengths, weaknesses. Brad Lambert, really, really polarizing prospect, and he's had a great year. And Jets fans should be excited because he's an exciting player to watch.
Well, he's the most polarizing the year of his draft year. I mean, he started off as potentially a top 3 pick, and the Jets ended up scooping him up at 30. But what he's done in the last couple of seasons, I mean, 2 years ago, he was all over the place. He played in multiple different leagues, finished up in the WHL, came back last year, played center for the Manitoba Moose all season long. And I think that's a real key bit too, that, you know, he's had this experience in North America playing in the middle, because as we all know, with Sean Monahan leaving, there is an opening at the second line center. And we heard from Scott O'Neill earlier this week that in all likelihood, I think Vlad Nemestikov would be the smart money bet to maybe start the season there. But we will see Brad Lambert, I'm sure, in the preseason get an opportunity, and maybe even a little bit of Cole Perfetti. So the Brad Lambert deep dive is up. Great work to you. And of course, Liz Hood, so happy to have her working on some stuff with us, and definitely worth your while for Winnipeg Jet fans. Now, the other thing we have to talk about, you mentioned the Gold Eyes, and how about this team? I think about a month, maybe 5 weeks ago, I think they were 9.5 games out of first place. Logan's got them in first place right now. And the win and jumping into the top was only the second biggest thing that happened last night, because you, my friend, managed to snag a foul ball while doing your job in the press box.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, I occasionally run the press box camera for the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. Tonight, I'm doing their stream graphics. I do a ton of things up there in the press box, depending on the game. Last night, I was doing the camera work, and yeah, it was about the 7th or 8th inning. And this ball, I've gotten a few this year that are coming at me. And if the pitcher's throwing a fastball and it's a foul ball, it's coming way too fast. Like, I'm getting out of the way, right? This was a breaking ball. It was a lot slower. I was able to settle under it, made the catch. And I've been, you can ask anyone in the press box that I work with there at the Gold Eyes. I've been talking about catching a ball while standing behind the camera for the 2 years that I've done it. And I've come so close. I even had one this year that hit my hand and I dropped it. And then I've stepped out of the way a ton of times because the ball's just coming way too fast. I'm not going to risk my life for it. But this one was perfect. I caught it. And it was so funny. I was like right in front of the kind of press box porch. So like people in the stands could see it too. So the whole stadium like started cheering. Ron, the legendary PA announcer, was like, and a great catch by Connor Hrabchak, a member of our video crew. It was hilarious. The press box went nuts. And I got a free 3-piece chicken meal from Sal's because I caught a foul ball on the fly. But yeah, I was just sitting there doing the camera work and a ball was coming at me and caught it. It was pretty cool.
I didn't even know that you get the foul ball, FOWL ball coupon from the Sal's.
That's what I was thinking about when the ball was in the air.
Away? Did you catch it right away? Were you able
I think
to
I'm
get
going to
down,
catch it tonight. I'm going to catch it tonight. Yeah, I'm back there tonight. I'm going to get my free 3-piece chicken meal, but yeah, that was pretty fun.
Well, listen, just before we move off of the fish, I mean, you should spend just a couple minutes. I mean, what a run this team's on, and all year long, they've had like the best pitching staff I can ever remember, and like maybe in Gold Eyes history. Like, we're now into the territory where you're comparing them, and I mean, there are individual pitchers that, are right there with the greatest seasons that we've ever seen. But as a group, I'd be surprised. And we'll talk to Andrew Collier later on this week, and maybe he can give us a little bit of context for just how special this season is for the pitching staff. But at times, they lost. Barras, I think, had 3-1-0 losses in the first half of the season. The bats have sort of come around, and the team's on a roll. And as I said earlier this week, if you've been waiting to get out to a game, this is the week to do it. The weather is absolutely gorgeous. The team is playing great. And there's a couple big events, too. Manitoba Social Night on Friday, Fred Penner bobblehead for the first 1,000 fans. That'll be a heck of a lot of fun. And then maybe the highlight of the entire season for so many on Sunday, the puppies in the park. Are you guys going to have some dogs up in the press box on Sunday? Probably.
I hope so. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, last year that was my favorite game was the bark in the park. Just seeing all the dogs. They get to kind of, I think it's the warning track last year that they walked. Like everyone with a dog goes and walks the warning track. It's so cool. And having all those dogs there, it's interesting. You think like, how would that work? But it does, and it's really cool. And yeah, like you said, the team is playing amazing. The weather's great. As for the next 2 nights, they're actually in a battle for first with the Sioux Falls Canaries. Last night they got the win, so they're up 1-0 in the series. And it's a 3-game set. So they were tied going into it for first. If you can win this 3-game series, you got a pretty good chance that you're going to finish first in the West, which is huge. And they'll look to win one of these next 2 games on Wednesday and Thursday to secure that series win. And yeah, their pitching staff is unbelievable. Last night they put up 13 runs. Max Murphy hit a 3-run bomb and had a double. And it's just they're such a fun team to watch. Even if you don't like the low scoring pitching games, like I said, last night was 13-6. They can put up runs in a hurry. They got a lot of fun players, a lot of fast players that can stretch out a hustle double and make things interesting. And a lot of good infielders that can turn double plays with routine, which I always think is really fun to watch. One of my favorite plays in baseball is a well played double play. And yeah, the come out, watch the team because they're pushing for first. They're in first right now, battling with the team in first, chasing them for the next 2 nights. And through the weekend, they'll be looking to extend their lead if they take it over the next 2 days.
Yeah, I'm going to get out for a couple of games of the rest of the week for sure. I see Andrew Halego. Yeah, he mentioned Joey Matalovich. he's been. I'd be stunned if he's not the pitcher of the year in the American Association.
Yeah,
he's been phenomenal. And he also mentioned Trevor Curl would make a great WST guest. His calls are great to listen to. I haven't met Trevor. I'm sure you have. He's done a great job for the Gold Eyes, calling the games on CJNU. But also firing out a ton of great content. If you're not following the Gold Eyes, you definitely should on all of your favorite social media channels. Nice little way to keep you up to date on what the team's doing and some great stuff from the road as well. The season's going to finish on the 2nd on basically Labor Day Monday, but make a point of getting ready potentially for some playoff baseball in the Peg coming up that first week in September with the way the Gold Eyes are playing. Listen, we're going to get to a couple of the big stories, and we'll talk more about the hockey situation, when Mike comes on a little bit later on, as it pertains to the Oilers. And I'm actually going to have a chance to interview Kevin Cheveldayoff for an event on Sunday. And I'm going to be quite interested to maybe talk just about, the relationship of general managers and how something like this resonates amongst guys that, we're not involved in the transaction. But I got to ask you right off the bat, considering we're going into this huge rematch with BC and Winnipeg, what you thought when you saw that alert come across your phone yesterday that Rourke was back with the Lions, and then the news that in all likelihood he's starting on Sunday against the Bombers in the rematch?
Yeah, so my first reaction was like I was just shocked, and then my second reaction was, well, what about Vernon Adams? Like, this guy is an MOP favorite. He goes down. He has one bad game against Winnipeg. Okay, you're on the road. Toughest place to play in the CFL. You have a bad game. Whatever, you're week to week. And now they bring in a guy who there's no way you're starting over him. Like, Nathan Rourke's playing. You bring him in. And a lot of people online talking about, like, the cap implications, too. Like, BC is spending a lot of money on their quarterback room. So my first initial reaction was like, oh my goodness, he's actually back. He's back for a few years, not just like the rest of this year with BC. And they've got the Grey Cup this year. He was always going to come back to BC, so that part didn't shock me. But man, yeah, I thought he would stay in the NFL a little bit longer. And then the news came out that he's playing this Sunday. And I mean, I don't know. It's going to make it a lot more fun. I think if you're a Bombers fan, and on this podcast we are, so we'd want Jake Dolegala. Obviously, the Bombers have a higher chance of winning. As you said on the show yesterday, nice. They went from favorites. Yeah, they went from favorites to underdogs in the span of like 4 hours yesterday, as you brought up. So that part of it sucks. But as Brady Oliveira said, he had a great answer. This is amazing for the league. He's going to sell a ton of tickets on his own. If he plays Sunday, the ticket sales are going to be through the roof for that game against Winnipeg. And going forward, the CFL is going to be a better product with Nathan Rourke in it. But shocking news. I did not expect that. Absolutely not.
I was right there with you. And listen, as I joked about this, maybe it was on yesterday's show, but Hammer and I were talking about, a couple things. I just brought up Nathan Rourke. Yeah, he went 3 for 13 and got cut from the Falcons on the weekend, but he'll be, continuing as the plan was to get NFL employment. And, I think I put it at 1 or 2% that we'd see him this year. And then 15 hours later, he's back with BC, and within 24 hours, he's starting on Sunday against the Bombers. Hey, when you take enough swings, you'll have some big misses. That was one of them. I will own it, and I will take the L. But I'll tell you what, and you know what? You mentioned Brady's answer, and Brady was so good yesterday. It was great to feel the confidence and the excitement that he and the Bombers have getting back to it. And it was like a double bye week for the Bombers, Connor. They played on a Thursday. The guys were getting out of town on Friday if they were. It was a full 10 days off for many of the guys just because of the way the schedule lined up and where this bye was. So it's been a minute, but if they can maintain any of the momentum they had in their game of the year, without question, in that 25-0 shutout of the British Columbia Lions, they'll be in good shape. But Brady's answer and I didn't even get to ask him, like, hey, when did you hear? I just said, hey, when did you guys start practice yesterday? He goes, about 11:30, 11:15. And I don't even know if I got the question out as to hearing about Nathan Rourke. And he got into it and said, hey, well, we heard a little bit of rumblings beforehand that was happening, and then finished practice. It was official. And then he completely just went in and said, this is amazing for the Canadian Football League, and talked about how proud he is to be a Winnipegger playing here in Winnipeg for the Blue Bombers, and what it means to see young guys wear number 20 jerseys and fill the stands. And it's exactly what is going to be happening in BC. And Matt Baker from the Lions will be joining us in a couple minutes. But you want to talk about a 180. This team had such a great start. They then sort of hit the skids. They lost 3 in a row. The loss against BC, loss against Winnipeg, and I haven't talked to Bake since then. But I'm very interested as to how that sort of went over, in addition to the main concern, which is, of course, the injury to Vernon Adams. They're now, that's ancient history. Nathan Rourke is back. But I am like you. The first thing I did think, I'm like, how the heck is VA going to take this? And listen, He's a professional. He's getting compensated very well. He's not going anywhere this year. But next year, they'll have to make a move. And I think there'll be a ton of interest around the Canadian Football League for Vernon Adams' services, especially when you look at some of his game tape over the last couple seasons, especially early this season.
Oh, absolutely. And I saw people try and make the argument, they're spending so much money on their QB room. Who's going to bail them out of this cap crunch? Well, we've seen, I know this is a different league entirely, but how many times does Vegas just trade away a high cap number player for nothing? And it's like, they bailed them out. But yeah, you're making your team better. Marc-Andre Fleury won the Vezina and got traded for nothing. Right. So, but they made their team better, and you're just doing whatever you can to make your team better. And teams will want Vernon Adams because they will make their teams better. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL. And this, Jeff Hamilton on CFL 110 basically said this completely flips the CFL on its head. BC, Michael brought up on the show yesterday, you're doing power rankings. Montreal's 1, Hamilton's 9, and then just flip a coin for the rest. And honestly, I was sitting there before the home and home against BC for the Bombers thinking 2-6, home and home against BC with how they're playing right now. This season is not looking too great. Now there's a legitimate argument that maybe the Bombers are the best team in the West. even with Nathan Rourke. Like if Nathan Rourke comes in and looks great and BC, turns things around, yes, obviously I think they have the wins. They've shown it this year on a more consistent level. Maybe they'd be the best team in the West, but Saskatchewan slid as of late. BC with Vernon Adams hurt, now they're bringing in Rourke, but they have bigger issues than that as well. And Winnipeg's coming off their best performance of the season. So it's the West is wide open. It's going to be such a fun couple weeks in the CFL coming up here, especially for the Bombers, BC, Hamilton, and then the Labor Day Banjo Bowl, which are going to mean something because Saskatchewan is right up there in the West as well. So those are going to be awesome. And if the Bombers can win these next two games and really make it like a standings crunch for the Labor Day Banjo Bowl, those are going to have some serious electricity behind them. And I
well, wait. For sure. I mean, in this game on Sunday now, as they say, Dusty's coming on later on. Yeah. The two games he's calling this weekend, Cody Fajardo and the Montreal Alouettes returning to Regina, 8-1 as Grey Cup champs with the return of Trevor Harris, and then the return of Nathan Rourke and the Bombers in the rematch on Sunday. I mean, two of the most high-profile, highly anticipated regular season games in the CFL I can remember in a very, very long time. So we will get to that, and we're going to talk about the Rourke situation and the return coming up with Matt Baker in a minute. And I'm with you. And I was real nervous going into that game. I did have confidence just based on what the Bombers have done for a long time that, they would be in that game. But I mean, BC just has been so good so far this year. We saw what they did to the Bombers earlier on. That was a gut check for Winnipeg, and they didn't just win that game. They did it with authority. And, I mean, listen, we talked about it before. 4 first downs, 42-18 time of possession. Oh. I mean, it was an absolutely stunning result. I don't expect that on Sunday. I didn't initially, even without Nathan Rourke, but things got a little bit more interesting. And to your point, if the Bombers can get a few wins over these next few, it's game on. I mean, for everybody. The BC Lions of 2011 are the perfect example. They started off 0-5. They ended up the last team standing at the expense of the Bombers, so it can happen. But I'll tell you what, this news reverberates around the Canadian Football League, but especially I'm fascinated to see how the Bombers handle and just how Nathan Rourke looks. I think he's going to be good to go and he'll be great this season. Is it too much to expect him just to show up in BC and be the Nathan Rourke we remembered? I guess we will see, but that is all coming up. We'll get Connor back in a little bit because we're going to bring in Matt Baker right now. But again, as he mentioned, the new CFL 110 is live on podcast. It is up on the YouTube channel. And when we recorded that, it was literally moments after the tweet came out that the BC Lions had reacquired Nathan Rourke and he was coming back to BC. CFL 110 is brought to you by our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg. The push is on, gang. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall before the snow flies, give Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 204-999-1234. It's been a very busy, productive summer for the guys at Garage Living. They've transformed dozens of garages in and around the city. Now they're gearing up for a busy fall as the push is on to get clients booked, garages designed, and installations complete before the winter. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, organize and beautify your garage with polyaspartic floor coating, made in Canada, premium metal cabinetry, slat wall storage solutions, as well as lift options so you can work on that car, your sled through the winter. Check out their website at garageliving.com and give our good friend Pat Kanuga a call. He's loving his move from early morning radio to garage designer. Pat can be reached at 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation or make an appointment to meet him at their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg, garages made for living. Shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Gang, if you have a move coming up in the coming months, trust it to the experts at Rolly's. Family owned and operated for 60 years and the most trusted name in moving services in the city and in southern Manitoba. Your valuables need that white glove treatment, and there's nobody better in the biz than Rolly's. And with their extensive logistics business that takes them throughout the city and the province on a daily basis, you can be guaranteed a flexible timing. flexible routes, and of course, great prices. What you're going to want to do is check out their beautiful new website at rollies.com. On the top corner, there is a request an estimate feature. They'll find out what you're moving, where you're moving, when you're moving it. You can also upload pictures of furniture and boxes if you need, and they'll turn it around with a great quote and get you moving to your next destination with as little stress as possible. For your next move, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in moving and storage in Manitoba. Hit them up online, rollies.com, to request an estimate today or for more information. Our friends at Consolidated Supply, we were talking a lot of golf the last couple of days. We had Z-Man on. I mean, they're the leaders in the golf industry. I mean, irrigation systems, artificial turf, golf carts, both new and used, as the club car dealer in Manitoba. They've got so many other great options for your property, like hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens, not to mention the full line of Crest power tools, including that satellite-guided robot RTK mower. And they are the leaders in small engine parts and repair. You got to see it for yourself. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, for those power tools, for the boat you're going to be in on the weekend, for the ATV, for everything that's powering your summer, you need batteries. And Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery are ready to serve you, allowing you to shop local, get the best in service and in price for batteries of all makes and models. Pop by and see them on Logan Avenue or on their new location on Dovercourt Drive in the south end of the city. And they'll help you out, get you set up for whatever you need. And they'll beat the pants off the big box stores when it comes to price. And price is always important, but so is service. If you are tied up and your time is valuable and you have a tough time getting down there, just give them a call or go to manitobabattery.com and they'll deliver your batteries to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. For all your battery needs, shop local, get the best price in town at Manitoba Battery. Hit them up today at manitobabattery.com. All right. Here's a guy that's changed quite a bit 24 hours ago, I bet. My good friend and former running mate at a few previous Super Bowls, now on opposite sides of the fence, certainly on Sunday, as the communications go-to guy for the British Columbia Lions, my pal, Bakes himself, Matt Baker. Bakes, how are you, buddy? Great to have you on the show.
Huss, it's great. And just kind of sitting around here looking for something to do, Not much happening.
Not much happening. Hey, what was yesterday like in the BC Lions office?
I think the best way I would describe it is a bit of a whirlwind. And listen, so many layers to this, obviously. I'm sure we'll talk about VA here in a minute. That's definitely one of them. But kind of didn't really have any inside knowledge that this was happening until pretty much a couple hours before. But starting to sort of read between the lines and think, okay, gets cut. We're on the bus to Commonwealth Stadium on Sunday, and the news comes down from Farhan, I think, that Nathan Rourke has been cut by Atlanta. So we're kind of like, okay, all right. Then it comes out that he clears waivers, I think, the next day. And then for me personally, I started thinking, okay, maybe something has to give here at some point. That I think I'd be talking about it 24 hours later? Not necessarily, but an exciting day, but a whirlwind day, I would say. And that's just going to continue. Nathan arrived this morning at 6:30 a.m. here. I was here to greet him, to say hi, and he'll speak after practice here in a couple hours' time. So in a way, it really hasn't sunk in yet, but definitely some enthusiasm in the market, unlike anything I'd experienced, probably since he was here 2 years ago. But I'd say it's a whirlwind, that's for sure. But the enthusiasm in the market, you can't really top it right now.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I kind of likened it, I'm sure, to a big 180 because – I mean, let's face it, the Lions had that incredible start to the season. A couple of tough losses, then came into Winnipeg. And, I mean, Bakes, before we kind of get too far into this Sunday, that was, even from a Bombers perspective, that was as stunning a result as I can remember maybe in any CFL game in a long time. I mean, listen, we knew and we thought the Bombers would be better than they were in the second matchup of the season after BC came in and took care of business relatively handily earlier on, with Vernon Adams going for like 500 yards of offense. You want to talk about night and day. I mean, 4 first downs, just over 100 yards. The really unfortunate late injury to Vernon Adams that cost him. I mean, that was such an inconceivable result, a shutout to the top offense in the league. It seemed like things, and then of course the injury. I mean, this was a real crunch time, and then of course the loss last week. I'm sure all of that is so far in the rearview mirror now that Nathan Rourke is in the building. No one's even thinking about it.
Yeah, and talking about that Winnipeg game specifically, and we had you on our podcast, a shameless plug, First and Now, myself and Winnipeg expat, as you call him, young Nicholas Kowalski. But that game was stunning for me. I can't sugarcoat it, Huss. It was, and the players and the coaches themselves have said it. Yeah, I mean, what's frustrating is that game for me really started to turn with the Tyrell Ford interception. Because if you go back and track it, I think the Lions' first 5 offensive series all started with outstanding field position. A couple of those around midfield. And you don't move the chains once. And we're thinking here, okay, knowing this stadium as well as I do, all it takes is one change in momentum, one big play to turn the tide to the other side. And the Ford interception is what did that. And, despite how bad it was, 13-0 at halftime, 6-0, they get a big third down stop, stopping Strevler short on that 3rd and inches. And that was an interesting moment for me because that should have been a big turning point. And it didn't really feel like anything was lifted on the Lions side of the field momentum-wise. Not too sure. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just one play that lost that football game. But as far as the mood changing here with Nathan Rourke being here, I mean, let's be honest. We know this kid. We love this kid. A lot of people expect him just to parachute in and pick up where he left off before the injury in 2022. Not saying he can't do that, but there might be a bit of a process here. He's not taken a meaningful snap since the 2022 Western Final in Winnipeg, remember. A little bit of spot duty in preseason with Jacksonville. And ironically, as someone asked me today, actually, can you think of another example of a guy playing an NFL game and a CFL game 1 week apart? I'm sure it's happened at some point, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. So, it wasn't going to happen without VA, right? Rick Campbell has made that clear. And I'll pose a question to you, Huss. Who's your most outstanding player the first half of the season?
Well, I mean, it was a 2-horse race between Cody Fajardo and VA, and they both got hurt.
Have to be those 2 finalists, right? Yeah, both guys have been hurt, right? So,
and here's what's nuts. I was watching TSN last night, and I can't remember what book they work with, but they're showing up their odds. And Nathan Rourke apparently got posted as 3-1 to win the MLP. Yeah. And then the number went down from 3-1 to like plus 230 by the end of SportsCenter. So, I don't know. Can you win the MLP by coming in Vernon,
right?
Yeah. Can you win that after having a great half season, not even being there? I mean, I don't know. I probably won't get too much into MLP futures right now, but you're exactly right. There is absolutely no runaway winner, at all. I mean, there are some guys. I mean, Brady Oliveira had a quiet start to the season. He's rolling right now. I mean, Zach's numbers are not really in the conversation, but I mean, if the Bombers have a great second half and, come back from their start, does he get some love? I'm really not sure. But the bottom line is, I mean, it's usually a quarterback award, and Fajardo's been hurt. Drew Brown is hurt now. Bo Levi's benched. Chad Kelly hasn't played yet. The Argos have gone through 2 quarterbacks. Zach Calero struggled early on, missed a game. Trevor Harris out for the last few games. VA is now out after his incredible start. Trey Ford never even played. Now he's hurt again. And Jake Mayer's been incredibly mid. So I'll say this. It is as wide open as has ever been. And maybe we'd be foolish to count out Nathan Rourke because there's not anyone that's planted a flag and put it so far in the ground that it'll be tough to get it out. So, I mean, just another great... Go ahead.
Jump in. This was kind of the debate after his injury 2 years ago. Should Nathan Rourke still be the MOP candidate? He won the top Canadian, rightfully deserved, but Zach Collaros ultimately won MOP as he deserved, right? Played the full season and put up some great numbers. So, it's going to be fascinating to watch it, though, and have to credit Vernon Adams Jr. I mean, this is a guy who came in. Ironically, the roles were reversed. Nathan Rourke got hurt, and Vernon came in, and the Lions won a lot more games than they lost with VA under center. So, one thing we can maybe hang our hat on is that the quarterback room arguably is as good, if not better, than it's ever going to be. And knowing Vernon like I do, he's going to show up, he's going to go to work, and he's going to prepare as if he's playing. And I'd even suggest we haven't seen the last of him behind center this season, whether it's working him into some packages or who knows what happens down the road. So, but I just reiterate that 3 losses in a row, starting to see some chatter on social media from people in this neck of the woods. Oh, well, at least the NFL and the Seahawks are right around the corner. But a lot of enthusiasm these last couple of days. And I even understand, the Bombers practiced with crowd noise yesterday. So I think they are expecting over 30,000 to show up now, given the news of the week. So,
well, that's
exciting
awesome.
times. We're both fans of this league, right? So we love stuff like this.
Yeah. Brady Oliveira said the same thing on the show with us yesterday. I mean, hey, listen, he said this is just awesome for the Canadian Football League. He's a Canadian player. He loves his role here in Winnipeg and the support that he gets. And we all want to see these stands filled. I mean, what's happened in Edmonton has been an absolute tragedy over the last number of years. And hopefully that gets turned around. But, what your owner, Amar Doman, has done has been, amazing. And this is just, like gas on the fire right now. At a time when they desperately needed some, a jolt of energy and good luck with VA on the shelf, they now get arguably the number one star in the Canadian Football League back from the National Football League just in time. As far as VA goes, this is going to be challenging for Rick Campbell. And I would say this is a guy that has done so much. He's certainly paid his dues, and he's performed at a very high level. To do this in a lot of cases with other professional athletes, you could be creating somewhat of a hornet's nest. From all accounts, the leader that Vernon Adams is, the fact that he's hurt right now and couldn't play anyways, it's not like he's getting benched after, playing quite well. You think that this can work for the rest of the season? I think we can all agree there's no way with the salary cap as it is, both of these guys can be on the roster next year. In all likelihood, VA will be somewhere else.
Yeah, it doesn't take Russell Crowe and a beautiful mind to calculate the numbers and suggest that they would be in tough. There's a good movie reference there for you. I tried to work one in to suggest that this would be feasible next year. But Rick Campbell basically said in his media availability yesterday, that's a bridge that they will cross when they do get there. And seeing some of I heard Connor on the segment before this talking about how some of the reaction is, if you're going all in to win in a year that's big for the organization, year number 70, about to play a game in Victoria in a couple of weeks, and of course, I'm not talking about it too much because being fully entrenched in the day-to-day operations, I'm very much become that cliche one game at a time guy.
Yeah.
So I'm on to Winnipeg this week, but yeah, the Grey Cup being in this city in November and the chance to get over that hump this year of all years, doing something like this, the opportunity was there. And you mentioned Amar Doman just a minute ago. This doesn't happen without him. So pay the penance later, as they say, right?
What does he get for that
and like I
marketing
said,
money?
yeah,
What does Rourke get for that marketing money? Is he going to be doing car washes on Mondays in the greater Vancouver area?
well, we've been to Winnipeg 7 times in the last 17 months. If we have to come back, maybe I'm driving him to your man cave there to do an interview. Maybe is that a good idea?
That sounds good.
That's so funny.
We've got a spot for VA or Nathan Rourke whenever they want to sit down and chat. That being said, this is going to, like, it just cranks up the excitement for this game. And Farhan mentioned, like whatever, he's coming in this year, he's getting $250. They might make that money back just in additional ticket sales for Sunday's game. Like, what's the reaction been in Vancouver from BC fans and just the sporting community that kind of overnight Nathan Rourke is back and is going to be under center on the Sunday at BC Place?
Yeah, I don't have an updated number, but I can tell you we've sold a lot of tickets in the last 24 hours. We'd already announced portions of the upper bowl were open as Peter, our maintenance guy, walks in here I'm just doing an interview right now, Peter. Yeah.
Hi, Peter.
Sorry. Peter's the guy that keeps this whole organization together, by the way. I was talking about ticket sales. Yeah, the upper bowl is open, and I haven't heard anything about additional sections, but nothing would surprise me at this point. So, yeah, and I'll just give you, again, another example. My sister is 4 years younger than me. She's in her mid-30s, kind of a casual sports fan, never loved football too much. Nathan Rourke is what really got her interested in the Lions 2 years ago, and she was the first text I got yesterday. So that just goes to show you how this market is jacked up.
Well, this is going to be a hell of a week in the Canadian Football League. As I mentioned, that Montreal Sask game with potentially Fajardo and Harris going at it on Friday night. And then I think we can all agree the main event, the return of Nathan Rourke to the BC Lions in this rematch and a matchup that'll determine the season series. I mean, the Bombers still have some catching up to do after their tough start.
That's it, yeah.
But a win on Sunday would bring them to within one win of the BC Lions, and they'd have the home field the tiebreaker if they ended up finishing tied. So there is a lot on the line, and I would suggest there's going to be plenty more eyeballs on this one as well. Bakes, I'm going to get back to Connor in just a second, but you guys are both Niner fans. I love the disdain when you said people in BC getting ready for Seahawks season. How are you feeling about the Niners right now? What's up with Brandon Ayuk?
Got Joe Montana here to prove it. If anyone is watching in the chat comment is going to accuse me of being a fair weather or whatever, although my era is I'm more of a Steve Young guy given my age. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, being fully entrenched with this, it takes a lot of energy to really get entrenched into the day-to-day in Niners camp. And, like yourself, there's a lot of Bay Area sports radio cast-offs who have done the YouTube podcast digital thing now. So I get the alerts every day, and they come up with those clickbaity type titles, like Trouble is Brewing in Niners Land was one yesterday. Damon Bruce, who does a great job. But yeah, hopefully this Brandon Ayuk drama gets settled here, and I'm still confident. I mean, I'm of the mind you've got this one more year window where you're going to have Brock Purdy on a rookie contract, and looking at the NFC West, I think Seattle's young and motivated, and by all accounts, Mike McDonald setting the new culture there. The Rams, as long as McVay and Stafford are there, are going to be a handful, but I'd say the Niners have one more year for sure where they're the clear-cut favorite in the NFC West. And it's all going to come down to what Kyle Shanahan's got planned in his repertoire in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl against Kansas City again. If it's a rematch, we'll see. But I'm confident. That's the long-winded answer. I still think that the pieces are in place, but clock is ticking to get that highly elusive sixth Lombardi. It's been, 12 years since you convinced me to buy that Quest for Six shirt in New Orleans, and we're still waiting. So let's go, baby.
I walk with Bakes, a very disappointed Bakes, through the streets of New Orleans after the infamous blackout Super Bowl between the Ravens and the Niners, and the battle of the Harbaughs. Of course, Jim's back now as well, but and John's still doing his thing, and Jim now elsewhere in California with the Chargers. But you know what? We've got plenty of time to worry about the Niners and the Chiefs and the rest of the NFL into next month. It's all about Sunday night. Unbelievable finish to the week in the Canadian Football League. Bombers and Lions. Nathan Rourke back. Can't wait. Bakes, all the best to you, buddy. I have a feeling this won't be the last time these two teams play this year. So we'll catch up again real soon, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
I would not be surprised either. The Blue Bombers are very much going to be a factor here. They still have a championship pedigree. And let's go. Big second half coming up to the season.
You got it. Thanks for doing this, buddy. Great to have you on the program as always. There's our pal Matt Baker.
Anytime.
All good. You can give him a follow on Twitter at BakesTakes84. And yes, First and Now, great podcast if you're into CFL content with Matt. And yes, our old pal Nick Kowalski, who is doing a heck of a job with the Lions team after being there, I guess, for the last couple of years. So let's get Connor back in here. And we won't have a ton of time for NFL talk later on today. But I didn't want to wait too long to get into this. And I figured it was a perfect segue from Bakes, because we were going to talk Lions, but I was going to touch on that with him. Where are you at on this training camp right now? First and foremost, we'll get to Ayuk in a second. This is more a self-serving question, but how should I be worried about Christian McCaffrey fantasy-wise, his fantasy value this year because of his injury situation right now? Like, are we going to have to wait 3-4 weeks to get CMC at 100%? I mean, do you think he'll be playing the first couple of weeks? What's the latest?
He'll be playing week 1. I think that was pretty clear even when he got hurt. I think it was 2 to 3 weeks, and it was a month and a week before the season when he suffered the injury. So he should be good with plenty of time. He should be able to practice even the week leading up. He is getting older, so they might give him a few vet rest days coming up to that week 1 matchup at home Monday night against the New York Jets. But I wouldn't be scared drafting CMC. I mean, the injury concern is going to be there. The injury concern when he came to the Niners was there. When they traded for CMC, everyone said that it was a bad trade because he's just an injury-prone running back, and now he's the best running back in the league. So can't play fantasy football scared. You want to take Christian McCaffrey. He's the best running back in the league on one of the best offenses in the league, and I think he'll be good to go with plenty of time heading up to week 1 against the Jets. Should be great.
I had the decision. I spent a ridiculous amount of money in our auction last year to get him. And our league rules are you can keep a guy that you got it, but you have to give him a 20% raise. And our cap is under $200. And I think I've got to pay him $69 this year. So, I mean, like we're talking like a McDavid, like, you know, eating that much of my cap. I think I'm still going to do it because, I mean, you just cannot replace that. He's like playing 2 players in one position when you're doing it. Yeah. And, I mean, as long as Shanahan is there calling the shots and they've got McCaffrey in his prime, he is going to be getting it fed to him. And I mean, just the big question is whether he can stay healthy and they'll be there when you need it. The other big topic around the Niners, though, has been Brandon Ayuk. And it's probably like, I know, like when this sort of thing happens with a player on my team, it's like fatigue. I mean, you're tired of talking about it, especially for a team that has so many other weapons right now. But man, I really think of Ayuk as a real key part of that Niners offense. Like if he was out for the year or like got hurt or something, would they still be good? Absolutely. But I do wonder just about all the noise around this at camp right now and how this all settles out. I mean, you think he's on another roster in another uniform by week 1?
I think he's a Niner. You heard Matt just bring up the fact that he still has 1 year left on his deal, his 5th-year option. And if he doesn't play on that, then it just gets kicked down the road to next year. and the Niners have 2 franchise tags at their disposal. So they control Brandon Ayuk. It's like a Cole Perfetti RFA. Like they have him. He's just trying to dictate, contract stuff, the latest. Oh my goodness. If the next update on Brandon Ayuk isn't the fact that he's traded or has been signed, I'm going to absolutely lose it. Like the NFL insiders, I get it. And Matt just brought it up. They're getting clickbaity. The Twitter headlines, they are just rewording the exact same report over and over again. We've known this for weeks. It's the Steelers or the Niners. Now the report is that, they have a contract in place with the Steelers and a trade in place, but the 49ers won't sign off. Well, why would that be? Because the 49ers don't want to trade Brandon Ayuk and they control him. You're right. It's getting tiring. And I can't imagine what the players are going like. Apparently the vibes at 49ers training camp are down, the vibes check. Everyone wants to know, but I get it. Like Trent Williams is holding out. Brandon Ayuk, there's all this noise. It's like, let's just get this over with. Either trade him or sign him. Like at this point, it's becoming a drag. We're getting into the middle of August. Like the season's going to start in 2 weeks. This needs to be taken care of one way or another. And I love Brandon Ayuk. I think he's amazing. I think he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. But like, come on, let's just get this over with. If he's going to get traded, trade him. If he's going to get signed, sign him. Like, let's just do it.
I see Rick Buck saying the Steelers are in the mix. The Steelers have been the team that has been kind of rumored.
It's the Niners or the Steelers. Yeah.
I mean, throughout. And I've got kind of a soft spot for Pittsburgh. I mean, I kind of love that, that team, the culture that they've got. And I'll tell you what, I mean, George Pickens is dynamic, but not that reliable. Bit of a wild card personality. If they can get Ayuk in there, huge boost for Russell Wilson and Justin Fields taking over the quarterback position. And I did see Waiters. Waiters, you're trying to poke me, huh? Is CMC above Mahomes on that NFL ranking list? Well, he, as a matter of fact, is. Yeah. There are 3 players ahead of Mahomes on that list. Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, and Lamar Jackson. Do you know what those players all have in common, Connor?
0 Super Bowls. Oh, wait, Tyreek Hill going. Sorry, never mind.
All got knocked out of the playoffs last year by the number 4 guy on the list, the Grim Reaper, Patrick Mahomes. So I will say this, that sort of fuel to the fire as the Chiefs go for a historic three-peat. Is exactly what I want. Give me more of that. Listen, we'll get to more of this, and we'll take a look at a few of the NFL futures when we hit the Coolbet lines a little bit later on. But we're going to bring in Mike McIntyre, of course. Great Bomber Lion chat, mostly Lions with the Nathan Rourke news with Matt Baker, but all of our Bomber chats on the show, including Brady Oliveira popping by yesterday. Check out yesterday's episode if you missed it. Brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers and Winnipeg Sports Talk, founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, and now coast to coast, but with 2 locations to serve you. We're serving up the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. We got to wait a little bit to get back to the Princess Auto tailgate down at the stadium. But in the meantime, we'll get ready to cheer on the Bombers on the road on Sunday and then get back there next week when they're back at home on the 23rd on that big 90s night on Friday. Again, pop by Princess Auto, see him in person, or you can always shop online 24/7, 365 and check out those great deals at princessauto.com. Another beautiful summer weekend coming up. Great week next week with the Bombers at home. I know there'll be a ton of Canadian Club consumed by Bomber fans at the stadium because, of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But in the meantime, before you're heading out to the lake or whatnot, make sure you hit your local Manitoba liquor marts. And if you're looking for Canadian whiskey, make it the original, Canada's finest and favorite since 1848 Canadian Club. As you can see on the screen, CC and Ginger Ale is mixed and ready for you, both at Princess Auto Stadium and at your LC, but also at your local beer vendor. So if you're looking for a great change up from the beers that you're normally taking on, when you're in your vendor, grab a few Canadian Club and Ginger Ales, ice cold, ready to go, and an amazing drink for the summer. That's available at all beer vendors as well. The gang at Wallace & Wallace is busy as heck, as you would imagine. They're Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialists since 1946. And if your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, Wallace & Wallace is there for you with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And of course, if you need a new garage door, they've also got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors as well. For your fencing and overhead door needs, give them a call at 204-452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lowson Crescent off of Kenniston. And just before we bring in Mike McIntyre, I don't want to alarm you all, but we're in the middle of August. Labor Day's coming up, and then we're into September, and there will be a changing of the seasons. If you're looking at your closet and realize heading into fall, you need to up your menswear game, you need to head on down to F Apparel, Winnipeg's leading menswear spot. They've got custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles. Great deal on right now as well. 25% off when you buy 3 shirts, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories around. If you're getting married or on a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a 15% discount for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F Apparel. For all your menswear needs, make it F, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can find out more information or make an appointment to come in for a fitting at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right, Dustin Nielsen coming up a little later on in the show. But right now, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre and check in with Mike. What's going on? How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Huss, not used to being with you on a Wednesday. We're kind of all over the map here in the summer, but always good to check in. Hump Day edition of McIntyre and Huss. Been exploring a little bit of the culture in our city over the last week. My wife and I have gotten out to a bunch of Folkorama pavilions. You know, I used to go to Folkorama as like a kid, and I just hadn't gone for years. It's great. It really is. We checked out the Africa Caribbean Pavilion on Saturday. We were at the Ukraine Pavilion. Hoosley was performing. That's always a treat.
Was that the Spirit of Ukraine Pavilion, or was that the Ukraine Kiev
so that's
Pavilion?
On this week. Yeah, that the Spirit lives on this week. That was the Ukraine Pavilion that wrapped up on Saturday night, and then the Spirit one's on, and then kind of went to see my people, the Irish Pavilion, the Celtic Ireland Pavilion on Monday night. Lots of river dance style entertainment.
What's the food at the Irish Pavilion? Is it just a bunch of potatoes or what? What's Irish
It's like
food?
bangers and mash, like sausages, lots of potatoes. The Irish love their potatoes. And you probably won't be, I don't want to feed into any stereotypes here, Huss, but there's not one but 2 bars at the Irish Pavilion. So that's in the Fort Garry Curling Club, and it was packed. In fact, all 3 pavilions we've gone to so far have been jam-packed. So people are getting out, and, you know, it just reminds me, and I mean, I think we all know this, but maybe we take it for granted. We live in a great city here in Winnipeg. We really do. Like, we got a little bit of everything. You were talking about the change in weather coming. Like, I don't know about you. I love the 4 distinct seasons that we get here, and I love the variety of food and entertainment and culture, and Folkorama brings that all together. So this is not a paid endorsement. This is just one man's opinion. But if you haven't been out, it goes till this Saturday. Get out to a pavilion or 2. You won't be disappointed. It was great.
City each and every summer. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, pick 1 or 2 and go check it out. And I have a feeling you'll probably want to go back for a little bit more.
Yes.
You know, it's been interesting with the Bombers on this hiatus. I mean, the basically a double bye week with the way the schedule works out. They're off. The Sea Bears are finished. The big show in town, we talked about this right off the hop, it's the Gold Eyes. Like, this turnaround under Logan Watkins has been absolutely phenomenal. And Mike, I know you covered this team for a long time, and we're going to ask Andrew later on this week, but I'm pretty sure, like, I would have a hard time imagining that the Gold Eyes top to bottom have ever had the pitching 1-4 bullpen that they've had this year. Now the bats have come around and they've made up, I think, a 9.5 game deficit and are in first place heading into the rest of a week that I think we're going to see some of the biggest crowds of the year. You got the Bark in the Park on Sunday. You got Fred Penner, the Manitoba Social, the Bobblehead on Friday. Speaking of, if you haven't been, go check out Folklorama. I would also suggest that the Fish at the top of the list right now, and this is the week to do it.
It really is. And, I just looked last night. So first place showdown this week, and the Gold Eyes took the first game of the 3-game set against Sioux Falls. So they're standing alone 47-35. Just remarkable. I'm just looking at the box score from last night, Huss. Dason Crows, he's the reigning American Association Rookie of the Year. I don't have it at the top of my head. He batted like 320 something last year, I think. Maybe a little higher. He's hitting 330 this year. You know where he's batting in that lineup? 6th. Right behind Max Murphy, who might be like the best all-around hitter in, when it's all said and done. Like, he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. He's hitting 5th. They have such a stacked lineup. In fact, I'm looking at their top 6 hitters. The guy with the lowest average is Max Murphy at 287, with, I believe, he got 3 RBIs last night, so he's up to 58. You're right. Pitching was what was doing it earlier in the year, and the pitching is still there. They just reacquired old friend Mitch Lamson. I know he had a bit of a rough outing the other day in his Gold Eyes kind of re-debut, but he's a proven pitcher at this level. They got him back from Mexico. They got a guy like Ben Anishko now in the bullpen who's basically been like near perfect. And this is a guy that was in the Mariners organization, a Winnipeg kid. And that's the thing, like the Gold Eyes, they're not just really good, they're really fun. They've got some guys like Max Murphy and Dason Crows and a bunch of other really good hitters. And then they've got some homegrown talents, like a Winnipeg, like Onishko, a couple great Canadian starters in Barrasso and Seabrook. It's great to see. They've had, let's face it, the standard is really high for the Gold Eyes. And that's because they've raised their own bar, with all the success they've had. But there's been a couple recent really tough years, kind of in the post-Rick Forney era here. Last year was a real low point for sure. And credit to Andrew Collier and Logan Watkins and the whole gang there for, going out and obviously doing a heck of a job in terms of player recruitment and signing. And what are they up to now? 18 games left here down the stretch. The Gold Eyes now sitting alone in first. It's going to make for a real exciting finish. And dare I say, the playoffs certainly look like they are looming.
Well, and we've seen some memorable and, dare I say, insane games in the playoffs. We talked about it last week.
We have.
And just to finish this off, I mean, the starters for the Gold Eyes, all 4 of their top starters, Barrasso, Reininger, Seabrook, and Matilovich, all with sub-4 ERAs. Joey's 2.44 on the season.
That's ridiculous.
9-3. And you mentioned Ben Anishko. Ben Anishko has come in 22 games as a reliever, 34 innings. He has an ERA of a 0.52. It's lights out when that guy goes into a game. So they keep rolling. As I mentioned, if you've been waiting to get out to the ballpark, this is the week to do it. One more homestand going in the final week of August through Labor Day weekend. And then hopefully some home cooking at Blue Cross Park for the playoffs going forward. Mike, let's transition over to the pucks. And listen, it is somewhat quiet on the Jets and most fronts, but the big story yesterday in the NHL was the dual offer sheet. We're going to get the reaction from Edmonton and Dustin Nielsen on that in about 20 minutes. But what did you think when you saw that pop up on the feed that Doug Armstrong and the Blues had gone in not once but twice and got the 2 top young players in the Oilers organization to sign offer sheets for what they think they're worth on the market with St. Louis?
I absolutely loved it. I loved every bit of it. Maybe this is just the part of me that kind of likes to see chaos and upheaval. But I love that a GM like Doug Armstrong, who's kind of on his way out the door here, and he's going out with a bang, that's for sure. Making way for Alex Steen, of course, the Winnipegger, and he's now put the Oilers in a real tough spot. Yes, there are some potential outs that I'm sure you'll get into with Dustin. I mean, the Evander Kane situation is obviously a big one. Now, could they move Cody Ceci? Regardless of how this plays out, I just love that the Blues have decided to try and make some noise. And, we talk so much, Huss, about, like in the NHL, we talk about teams trying to do things to improve their own standing. What we usually don't talk about, though, is a calculated move that not only might make you better, but might make an opponent worse, or at least put them in a position to take a step back. And that's what an offer sheet can do. Now, obviously, the track record on these, we don't see them very often. And when we do, they typically get matched. We've never seen a double-barreled offer sheet like this. And, if I had to predict, I just don't see how the Oilers match both of these. To me, the more likely scenario is they match on Dylan Holloway and they let Philip Broberg go. And, you look at what the compensation is. Both these guys are first-round draft picks that, probably haven't been given the full opportunity yet in Edmonton, but certainly there was flashes last year that suggested they're ready for more. And if you're the Oilers, you're already now one of the oldest rosters in the league. You look at what they signed this summer, and you're about to be one of the most expensive, once you get presumably the Draisaitl, McDavid, and Bouchard extensions ultimately done. You need some players on some cheap contracts. You need some young players. And what the Blues have done here is taken, as you said, two of the brightest, if not the brightest young prospects, and made sure that they will not be on cheap, entry-level style contracts, and really force the Oilers' hand. So I love it. It's chaotic. It's bold. I know there's, certainly I'm sure people in Edmonton who are furious with the Blues and maybe furious with Ken Holland for letting it get to this age. Let's not forget, and to me, that's one of the things with offer sheets that people gloss over. The players had to be on board with this. I mean, Broberg and Holloway, this was not a gun put to their head or done against their will. They've signed the offer sheets. And how would that potentially play out? Like, I love the potential theater here. You've got, maybe Draisaitl and McDavid, it's rumored, taking a bit less with the idea of building this team. And then you've got these guys who clearly are going to get more than what Edmonton was going to offer them. How does that dynamic play out? And who can blame these guys? I mean, if the money, would any of us turn down, this kind of offer? I don't think so. I think it's pretty hypocritical to really blast these guys. I mean, careers are fairly limited. Go get your money.
Let me throw this at you. And I was on with the guys in Calgary this morning on 960, and we were talking about this. And as we were talking about it, sort of came to me like the GMs historically have not been ones to kind of poach their fellow GMs in this fashion. It's happened very rarely, despite what the insiders seemingly have told us every year. This is the year that the offer sheets are going to be signed. It just doesn't happen. And now it has. I wonder how much this was the Blues seeking out these guys and trying to make this happen, and how much it might have been their agents. Because think about this. Yeah. These guys have no other recourse. They watched Jeff Jackson. Like that. This wasn't Ken Holland. Like, we can talk about Ken Holland all we want. Jackson signed Arvidsson to the $4 million a year deal. They re-signed Adam Henrique, $3.5 million a year. They gave Jeff Skinner $3 million a year. They brought Corey Perry back at another $1.5 million. I mean, while they were doing all that, they were using up the cap that they were going to need to sign these guys. And if I'm the agents for these two players, I'm like, okay, so this is how it's going to go. You're going to spend all the money and then say, listen, sorry, guys, we just can't do anything. We're going to have to get you guys in here on really cheap deals for a couple years, and then don't worry, you'll get yours afterwards. I wouldn't be surprised if the agents, and whether it's the same guy or different guys, I haven't looked it up, maybe work together on this, knowing what the situation was, and tried to find a willing partner that might be able to get this out too. Like, I don't think this was just St. Louis as much as they're the team that found them, because listen, this is Edmonton's own doing. They put themselves in this situation. They didn't need to go crazy signing all those guys. And listen, everyone was trumpeting an A+ off season for the Oilers 2-3 weeks ago. That has changed a little bit in Edmonton over the course of the last, the last 48 hours.
No, I agree. And if that was the agents, doing, the agents are doing their job. It's what agents should be doing, trying to get the best deals for their clients. And it's pretty clear, Huss, you're right. The best deals weren't necessarily going to come from the team that currently owns their rights. And that's through no fault necessarily of the players, but because of what the Oilers went out and did. How about I know there's this conspiracy theory a little bit out there, and I love a good conspiracy theory, but I think even like Jim Matheson, I believe, was tweeting about it earlier today. The idea that Ken Holland, who maybe things didn't end in the best way with him and the Oilers, and he was kind of a lame duck GM down the stretch. I love that people have pointed out that one of his absolute best friends in the hockey world, his longtime golfing buddy, is Doug Armstrong. And the idea that this was, that if Ken Holland was still the GM of the Oilers, Doug Armstrong wouldn't have done this. And that maybe Holland actually had a role in all this as well, almost planting the seed, if you will. I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but it makes for good water cooler discussion in any event. I mean, I got to imagine right now there's some frantic activity happening behind the scenes with the Oilers. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that. I'd love to see what some of the player text chats look like right now. It's shaken up what has otherwise been a fairly sleepy few weeks around the league. And I'm all for it. So, maybe this opens the door. It should. I've never understood. It's collectively bargained that this is a tool. Why are so few GMs afraid to use it?
Well, here's the thing. This is such a unique scenario. Like, very rarely do you get in and like people say, "Oh, it's so great. They're taking a shot at the top team." It has nothing to do with that. It is. Listen. I guess it's not a coincidence that a team is up against the cap. They did really well. They've got a lot of it, but this is purely because of the decisions that they've made as to what they did on free agency, and they put themselves in a position where that they were vulnerable. You've got the right to match. Most of these teams will always match.
Let's bring it home here. And if you're the Jets, and I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff was on record earlier this summer, saying that the Jets would be looking around the league at teams that might be in cap hell to see if they might be able to poach a player. And so far, obviously that hasn't happened. Look at what the Penguins did yesterday, Huss. Speaking of Winnipeg and Winnipeggers, the Penguins they were just paid draft picks. I believe they got 2, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 draft picks to obtain former first rounder Cody Glass. Like the Predators, who are one of those teams that went on a spending frenzy this summer, Steven Stamkos and others, they have to shed salary. And I'm not saying Cody Glass was the guy the Jets should have been going after, although it would have been a nice little story. But there's a team that had to pay a price to send a player in Cody Glass to the Penguins. So Cheveldayoff and other GMs sometimes talk about using or looking for trade options for teams that are in cap hell. But here's another tool. Like, you don't have to give up anything. You can go out. I mean, I guess you do if the offer sheet signed. There is obviously a price chart, if you will. But you look at what the Blues may have to pay here. I think you would say it's well worth the draft pick compensation. So I just don't understand. I mean, GMs talk all the time about using trades to go after players that teams are going to have to unload, but why not use an offer sheet? It's basically, it's kind of trying to do the same thing, but just another way of going about it. And is it just that GMs are so afraid to ruffle feathers or step on each other's toes? Like, I don't know, but
well, it's two things. It's twofold. One, they probably are that because it never works. I mean, every GM has said, don't even try it. We will just match.
Right.
You have to find a situation like the Oilers have put themselves into where they just simply can't do it. And
right.
You know, a lot of the teams that have been right there at the cap haven't had a situation like their two young players that they haven't got signed yet that have been a part of that. I mean, listen, the Oilers have done a lot of great things. I mean, they went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. I mean, even without those two young players, right now, next season, they'll be fine. They'll be really good. But this team, when you look at it, is very old and
slow.
You take away the 22 and 23-year-old players, the top two prospects, it is have it. But I mean, overall, I think most GMs think that there's no point in doing it and bringing the ire of one of their contemporaries when they know full well what it's going to happen. You're just going to stick the guy, and then you've got an enemy out there. It had to be a spot where they really were in a jam. And like, how do you see this playing out? Like, I know there's a lot of talk about Evander going on LTIR. I mean, doesn't he have to be on the roster on the first day of the season and then put on LTIR? I mean, I don't know whether they can just all of a sudden get an extra $5 million in space. I saw Hrabchak talking yesterday. Go, well, they could maybe go 11-6 for the first number of games of the season. I mean, what a joke that would be. But welcome back to the league, Stan Bowman. Here you go.
Yeah.
Your first order of business.
Few things have changed, no doubt. So first off, to your point about offer sheets, you're right. And so I know people have said, well, you know, what does this mean for like Cole Perfetti? Because a team could offer sheet Cole Perfetti. Again, two things have to happen here. The player has to agree to the contract. And I suspect, to your point, Huss, the Jets would match any offer given to Cole Perfetti. I mean, unless it's such an extreme overpay. And again, the salary, what the salary is dictates what the compensation would be. So, I mean, the salary would have to be so obscene, and I just can't see that happening. You know, and the Jets have the cap room. The Jets aren't the Oilers where they would have to now scramble. You know, obviously, if it was a big number, a really big number, the Jets would prefer that big number comes in on a long-term extension for Cole Perfetti. And an offer sheet is not a long-term extension. So that's the other thing that these offer sheets can do. It potentially walks the player closer to, walks you closer to losing that player in free agency. There's also the whole idea of qualifying offers, and we won't get too technical here, but like Philip Broberg's qualifying offer in 2 years is going to be huge. He better perform to that standard. Otherwise, like, that's going to be, you know, it's a risk for sure on a young player. So, you know, just on Cole Perfetti, I don't think the Jets are worrying. They're not losing any sleep over it. In some ways, an offer sheet would, you know, be solving a potential problem for them, although maybe opening up the door to some other problems, like we said, in terms of the duration of a deal. As for how the Oilers play this, like I said, I'd be stunned if they match both. To me, Holloway is probably the easy one because I believe they could match Holloway, and simply Kane on LTIR would get them where they need to be without any other moves. If they're going to match the Broberg one, they are going to have to make moves, and that's where a guy like Cody Ceci comes in, where the Oilers, they would have to pay a team. Like, they'll have to attach something to Ceci, kind of like what the Predators just did yesterday to Cody Glass, for a team to take it. And if you're another team, like, are you throwing the Oilers a lifeline? You would be driving that price up because you know that they're in no man's land. So it's a tough spot to be in for sure. To me, I suspect they walk away from Broberg, they match Holloway, and life goes on. But yeah, it's a really interesting situation for sure. And I guess with the clock is now ticking 7 days, obviously, and they could make their decision prior to 7 days. They don't have to wait out the full 7. We'll see if they do. I think in some previous ones, haven't teams like announced like an hour after the offer sheet that we're matching? I mean, that obviously, yeah. So
that's
that
what
hasn't
the Jets
happened
would do.
here.
That's what the Jets would do. I guarantee you. If someone tried to snipe Cole Perfetti,
they wouldn't let it
ink
play
wouldn't
out.
even be dry, and they would do it. And just for people wondering, and this is what was so interesting about these signings. The Holloway deal, which was $2,290,457, that is the threshold. If it was $1 more, the compensation would have been a second round pick, but it's a third rounder. The Broberg deal is $4,580,917. If it was $1 more, the compensation jumps to a first and a third. Instead, it's a second. But again, for the Perfetti situation, let's see someone said, hey, we want to get him and we're going to give him an 8-year deal at $7.5 million. Well, the Jets could match that, or they could take a first, a second, and a third round pick for it. Now, I still think the Jets probably just do it and move forward. But you have to be able to pay the guy and do it forward. If it's between 9-1 and 11-4, it's 2 firsts, a second, and a third rounder. And if it's more than 11-4, it's 4 first round picks. And again, that, you can make a big play on a guy. Like, I don't know how many players in the league. It's a very small group that a team would trade 4 first round picks for. I mean, it's the currency of success right now in the NHL. So very, very interesting situation. I'm with you. I think the Holloway signing is most likely. But again, I mean, there's a lot of phone calls going on right now to see if they can find some way of getting their way out of this.
How about the fact, Huss? So the trade that happened earlier yesterday, before I believe, was it Pittsburgh and St. Louis that made the
Pittsburgh and St. Louis? The Blues had to get their own second round pick back, so they were eligible. That's the other thing. You have to have your own pick. You can't just pick up some other team's second rounder to do it.
So they had to go rummage through the lost and found bin and get their old draft pick back, which, like, I just love that. That is, and of course, for the few minutes or whatever it was between that trade and then the offer sheets, like the hockey world, there was like lots of like WTF, like, what is this trade? Because on paper, it just looked like a ridiculous trade. I believe it was 2 draft picks for 2 draft picks. And it's like, why would you even do this? But of course, there was a method to the madness. They had a real purpose for what they were doing. So, yeah, I mean, I love it. I love every bit of it. I love the drama. I love the intrigue. I love the chatter. And hey, if it gets GMs, other GMs around the league, maybe to start contemplating using this a little bit more, I'm all for that. I won't hold my breath on that happening, however.
Well, Mike, I loved it too because it gave us a lot to talk about right now, and I'm looking forward to. We were gonna have Dusty on. He got called into some CFL stuff, but I'm looking forward to having Tom Gazzola, who covers the Oilers, jump on and give us a little bit of a taste of what exactly the mood in Edmonton is right now after this and how he sees it going forward. Hey, maybe we'll see you at the ballpark this weekend. Thanks for doing this.
You betcha, Huss. Take care. Have a great week.
Good stuff. There is Mike McIntyre. Cheers to Mike, Tommy, who's coming up, and a big cheers to our friends from Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Yes, a delicious Little Brown Jug. Might be having a few of those down at Blue Cross Park, of course, both generic and 1919 available at the ballpark. We're talking hockey right now, and if you can believe it, I mean, training camp is just around the corner. And of course, at every level, the game is getting ready to gear up again. Hockey season is just about here, and that means it's time for a trip over to Royal Sports. The gang, I guess I should mention, and we've got it up right now. I'll mention Royal in a second, but our friends at the Beer Can, as well as Next Door and Hoagie Boys, serving up some of the best food around. Now, you can always get a great sandwich 7 days a week at Hoagie Boys. You can always get the best taste of local beer in Winnipeg and amazing food from the Cosmos guys at Beer Can. But it is Wednesday, and that means it's Wingy Wednesday at Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke, right in the heart of Wolseley. One of the best wing nights in town. $15 for a pound of their amazing wings. But what sets it apart is they roll out the sauce cart. 14 different house-made sauces that you can mix and match. Try to your delight. I've been there a number of times this summer. The wings are amazing. The sauces are great. So if you're a wing lover, pop by Next Door today. And of course, ice cold beers throughout the weekend in this beautiful weather at the Beer Can, and 7 days a week. The biggest and baddest sandwiches in town over at Hoagie Boys. I was mentioning that hockey season is here. And if you need to get ready for the upcoming season, Royal Sports is the spot. The undefeated, unmatched hockey superstore in Winnipeg for over 40 years is ready for you with all the newest equipment from all the top hockey companies in the world. Waiting for you there. The biggest selection of goalie equipment as well. Whatever you need to start the season, Royal has it. Make sure you get there before you hit the ice. And, of course, follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information as we get closer to Labor Day weekend and heading into September. And, of course, a big shout-out to our friends at Boston Pizza. CFL gets going again tomorrow. Interesting game, Ottawa, Calgary, and then Friday night, Montreal, Saskatchewan. If you're looking for a great spot to watch the game, of course, Bombers on Sunday night. Make it Boston Pizza, ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, and the best gourmet pizzas around. They got a great deal right now, $19.64 for any of the medium specialty pizzas, celebrating their founding at 1964. And hey, if you are eating at home tonight, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's head out to Edmonton. Tom Gazzola is with us. We'll get Dusty on later on this week. But, Tommy, the Oiler beat got a little interesting over the last 48 hours. How are you, pal? Great to have you back on WST.
Hi, it's great to be back. I wasn't ready for this. I thought this was going to be a nice week in between holiday weeks, and here we are talking about absolute chaos, mismanagement of assets, and there's never a dull moment with this damn hockey team, as we know. So here we are. And, you know, Mike was talking about some things right before I hopped on that are worth mentioning. And he's right. Like, that weird, obscure trade between the Penguins and the Blues does play into this. And we had Andy Strickland on with the Nielsen Show this morning, Jeremy Rutherford in his article via The Athletic yesterday, and then even myself talking about it on the EST Hangout yesterday. We're like, all of us thought to ourselves, you know, what does this have to do with personal relationships in the National Hockey League? And the GMs are a bit of an old boys club, and I think that certainly factors into all the drama that has unfolded in the last day.
I wonder how much the agents of Holloway and Broberg were involved in this, because it's pretty clear when the Oilers went on that spending spree on the 1st of July and inked Arvidsson and Skinner and brought back Henrique and Corey Perry, that who was going to get squeezed? It was the guys that had no other options. And it was quite clear, like, these guys were going to get paid much less than they probably deserved or other teams would get to them because of the situation. And the only recourse they had was to find a taker that would sign them as RFAs. Now, you have to be willing to leave the team. I think there's a good chance that one of these guys does that by the time this is all said and done. But I would imagine that the agents may have been pretty key in this as well. And, I mean, a lot of this is sort of the Oilers' own doing. I mean, we all remember how fired up everyone was around July 1st when the Oilers were grabbing everybody up, and this is what's going to put them over the top. The other shoe has now dropped, and I would imagine the consensus of Oiler fan right now is maybe not quite the A+ that they were giving out on, the 7th of July.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reduced it down to probably like a B. Depending on how this situation plays out, maybe a B minus. But yeah, it started out, guns a-blazing, and the Oilers coming off that Game 7 loss in the Cup final. Things were great, but they were vulnerable. And now, that we've had about a day to decompress and kind of chew on this a little bit. We're starting to look into where this all began. How did this come to be? Who is the one that deserves the blame? And the finger pointing has begun. And, some people are blaming Kenny Holland for this, saying that he should have gotten it done. Well, how is this Ken Holland's fault when you told him that his services would not be required following this past season? You basically, tied his hands behind his back. You said you're still the GM, but you know that, the purpose of it isn't beyond this year. There was, some suggestion that this was a priority handed down to Holland to get done, and he should have been taking care of this around Christmas time, around December. Like, come on. Are we really going to believe that? Like, it's a bit far-fetched to do that, and to lay the blame at the hands of the guy who's on his way out and is gone now, I think it's unfair. Jeff Jackson's been here the whole time, and if these two players were to be a priority for him and he really wanted to get it done, if he actually went to Ken Holland and said, go get this done, and Ken Holland a month later hadn't done anything, what do you think Jeff Jackson would be saying to him? Why haven't you gotten this done? You know what, Ken? We're going to end this agreement and relationship a little bit early. You didn't want to listen to me. See you later. Like, that didn't happen. So, we speculate here. We dissect everything this team does. But if we're actually going to be blaming Kenny Holland, I think we collectively are in the wrong, because it's not his fault. The other thing, too, you bring up the agents. Speaking of Ken Holland and Philip Broberg's agent, there was a time earlier in this past season where word came out, someone reported that Broberg's agent was looking to facilitate a trade from the Oilers somewhere else where his player and client could play. And that surprised a lot of people, because at the time Broberg wasn't playing particularly well. He wasn't playing a lot with the Oilers, and he eventually got sent down. That came as a surprise to the Oilers brass and Ken Holland, and it didn't like ruin their relationship, but it didn't help, obviously. And listen, that's an agent doing his due diligence, trying to make sure his client gets paid eventually. But to get paid, you need to play. And in the situation with the Oilers, like, he wasn't going to be playing. Now, part of it was his performance wasn't up to snuff. The team got out of the gates horribly. You and I discussed it on this fine program multiple times, and we talked about a lot on EST as well. So there was a lot that was going wrong at the time, and then that just kind of poured a little bit of salt onto the wound. So yeah, maybe that whole thing and the relationship between the Oilers and the agent factors in a little bit. So there's a lot of layers to this story. I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
How did they get out of it? Like, there's a lot of talk about Evander going on LTIR.
Yeah.
Now, from my understanding, I mean, he still has to be on the roster on opening day and then get put on LTIR. And I mean, what has been done in the past is, you wait to the opening day to make those moves and then you sign your guys. Well, that ship has sailed for the Oilers. They can't do that. Maybe that was their plan. But with being signed, they're on the books right now with Edmonton, unless they let these guys go. And they're $7.7 million over the cap. I mean, even if they let Broberg go and keep Holloway, I think there's still a little bit of work to be done. I heard Rashog yesterday on TSN suggesting that, maybe they could go 11-6 for the first number of games in the league, which doesn't seem like a very good option for the team. And the bottom line is, like, this, they're looking to win this year and a number. I mean, they're going to keep Leon, big raise coming up. Bouchard's getting a huge raise. McDavid will get a massive raise. These are the two. I mean, they did bring in Savoy. And again, the jury's out whether he actually can play in the National Hockey League. Sure. But he'll get an opportunity at some point. He's just 19 or 20 now, so he's a young player. But other than that, these are the two young prospects on the team that project to improve and be a big part of the future. I mean, it ain't going to be Corey Perry in a couple years or Adam Henrique or Victor Arvidsson. It kind of seems like it was maybe a little bit short-sighted, and they were still in that playoff mode when they made those moves without thinking about the long-term future of the club and what those young players can do next year for this team. Both of them had huge roles in the playoffs.
They did, which was a pleasant surprise. A couple of things there. There is a precedent with this team to wait to the last second to get those RFAs locked up. They did it a couple of times with Ryan McLeod. And, Ryan McLeod was a good soldier, and he kind of dealt with it. And that was something that Kenny Holland had to massage, and he had to make sure that the player felt like he was valued. And he told the player that he would get him his money when he could. And so a bit of a sacrifice on one side from Ryan McLeod the first time around. And then the second time around, he got a bit of a bump up, and he got hurt and didn't have a particularly great season last year. Didn't have a very good playoffs either. But the Oilers have done that with RFAs in recent years. The other thing is the Oilers have also started seasons short on the roster. They had a 21-man roster, I believe, a couple seasons ago that they started with. Last year, they had a 22-man roster. So Shaggy pointing out that they could go 11-6, as ridiculous as that sounds on August 14th, it does come with merit, and it does come with precedence because it has happened here in recent years. So these are things that the Oilers have done recently that maybe, for whatever reason, they felt like they could get away with again. And it didn't happen this time. They got burnt, and now they, I feel like, are in meetings, having calls, scrambling to get hockey ops together to figure out what the heck they're going to do, because it's been silent from an Oilers standpoint outside of, Stoff on his show, putting some stuff out there, and everyone else was in vacation mode. They're coming off the McDavid wedding, and there was a couple more weeks before everything was going to ramp up again, but all of a sudden this forces their hand. So I think they're trying to assess and decide how they want to go about this. And yes, they're going to be leaning on Bill Scott to figure out how they can do their cap gymnastics. They're going to have to figure out where they project Dylan Holloway to be in a year or two. Where do they project Philip Broberg to be in a year or two? Philip Broberg is not a $4.85 or $4.58 million a year defenseman right now. He's played 81 NHL games. He started out the season poorly, like I mentioned, and then came on strong in the playoffs with 10 really good games. Dylan Holloway also spent the majority or a good chunk of the season in the minors. He started the year with the big club, got hurt, got sent down, and then when he came back up, basically took away a spot from anybody else that was kind of a 13th forward, and he forced the Oilers' hand to play him in the postseason, which rewarded both him and the team because that's how strong he was playing. So this predicament, this dilemma, it's an Oilers situation that they caused themselves, and I don't know if it's ignorance, arrogance, or a combination of the two. Another team saw them as vulnerable, and funny enough, I did Calgary radio shortly after the season ended, and people from Calgary were saying, what if the Flames go after Broberg and Holloway? I'm like, well, they can sign there and be public enemies number 1 and 2 forever in Edmonton, and then they'll have to play on a terrible team for the next 5 years, and they'll be mocked endlessly for that. So that poo-pooed that idea, but I didn't think it'd be the St. Louis Blues, who look like a team that is trying to retool on the fly and have guys that have been around the league as GMs that have won Stanley Cups, not only in Doug Armstrong, but Peter Chiarelli, former Oilers president of hockey operations and GM. So there's so many layers to this. When you really unpack it, it is incredible. It's dramatic, and it just is. It's at the end of the day, it's so Oilers, Huss.
You mentioned the cap gymnastics that they're going to need to make happen. They're going to need the Simone Biles of cap management.
Not the ray gun?
To say, not the ray gun. Some might say Ray Gun was behind all those early signings, putting them in this position to begin with. But Hey, it's given us lots to talk about. Hey, I know you got to run. Were you at the McDavid wedding? Were you a part of the nuptials?
No, thankfully, no. I did not make that list. I'm sure it was a great time, but no. Great photos.
It's a little far
like
cry. Far cry from Gretz and Vicky Moss back in the day, huh? It was a little more private.
Yeah, a little more private. But they did sell the photos to like Vogue, and that spread made it out, or it was published yesterday. And I had people asking me about that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't care about that stuff. But I went back and looked at the pictures. Looked great. And yeah, it wasn't the Janet Jones, Wayne Gretzky Canadian royal wedding that we had at St. Joseph's Basilica on Jasper Avenue here in Edmonton. But yeah, it looked like it was a great time. So good for them. Very happy. They're two wonderful people, and hopefully the start of many, many wonderful years together.
Guys, like I told Dusty earlier, consider yourselves lucky. You're the one market, well, two markets, I guess, along with St. Louis, that have done anything interesting in August. And you guys at Edmonton Sports Talk are the beneficiaries of the big talking point in the hockey world this week. So keep on killing it, buddy. Enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll catch up soon, and looking forward to talking some puck with you throughout the year.
Likewise, Huss. Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it. There's a handsome Tommy Gazzola in Edmonton with Edmonton Sports Talk, covering the Oilers beat. You can also catch him hanging out on the Hangout after the Nielsen Show with Matty Owanek over on Edmonton Sports Talk on their YouTube channel and, of course, all of their feeds. All right, we're going to get Connor back in here in a minute. We're going to get to the Coolbet lines. We're going to take a look at what's happening at the track tonight because they are back with live racing this evening at Assiniboia Downs. We knew that we're going to have to take a couple Wednesdays off, but guess what? That is done. We are back at the track tonight, and there is a full slate of racing this evening with some great fields. I'll make a couple picks a little bit later on, but as you all know, there's nothing like seeing the races live out at Assiniboia Downs. It's free admission. It's free parking. Great food. I would suggest thinking about trying to make a reservation before the end of the season in the clubhouse dining room for that amazing prime rib buffet that we enjoyed with some of our winners a couple weeks back. But 7:30 is post time tonight. And if you are betting at home, you can always work with HPIBet.com to bet from home and watch Kirk and Stretch bring you all the action on the Assiniboia Downs YouTube channel. We mentioned earlier, fish season is on right now. Not fishing season, but more like the team that's fishing for wins is the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. And man, have they been hot right now. In first place after their big win last night. Another matchup with Sioux Falls this evening. They'll finish up the series tomorrow and then welcome in Sioux City for a big weekend that includes the Manitoba Social Night on Friday with the Threadpenner bobblehead giveaway for the first 1,000 fans. And then Sunday afternoon, the annual Bark at the Park. All the information and ticket availability on the events are at goldeyes.com, or you can give them a call at 982-BASE. Got to give a cheers to our friends over at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Just got back from August long weekend from my favorite 3 days of the year. World-class fishing and even better hospitality from the folks at Aikens Lake and the Aikens team. An amazing family, friends trip, or a corporate outing as well with a number of different options. Find out more on booking for 2025, or you can see if Pitt's got any room to squeeze in before the end of the 2024 fishing season online at aikenslake.com. And a quick shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend. Our golf update will really begin in earnest tomorrow because it is time for the FedEx Cup playoffs. They're in Memphis, Tennessee at the FedEx Jude. We went through our picks earlier today on the Lock Shop. We've got some exclusives. We'll hit those in the Coolbet lines. But it's on. We're now down to the final 70. Taylor Pendrith and Corey Connors looking good for the Tour Championship right now. Adam Hadman's at 37th. Got to be in the top 50 after this week. And, of course, as we talked about with Z-Man yesterday, especially for the Canadian players, playing their way onto that President's Cup team with Mike Weir as the captain, incredibly important as well. Huge thanks to Breezy for their support. actually going to be there for their member guest tournament, interviewing Kevin Cheveldayoff on Sunday night. I'm looking forward to that. But if you want to find out more information on making Breezy you and your family's long-term golfing home at one of Winnipeg's top private courses, give Corey Johnson a call at the clubhouse, and you can find out more information online at breezybend.ca. I'll throw this why not question of the day out to everyone just as I bring in Connor. As it pertains to the Edmonton Oilers, this is kind of what we just talked about with Tommy. I mean, who do you think is the culprit for putting themselves in such a vulnerable situation? Is it Ken Holland? Is it Jeff Jackson, who'd been basically running the show post-Holland before bringing in Stan Bowman? Or is it, the agents in the St. Louis Blues that are sort of being predatory here? Interested to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the chat for the why not question of the day for AutoCorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get Connor Hrabchak back in here as we continue the program. Connor, just before we move off that topic, I mean, just thoughts on the predicament the Oilers have found themselves in. They spent a lot of money. They knew they had big extensions coming up for Bouchard and Draisaitl. That sort of got pushed off to the side. And it seemed like they sort of forgot about two very key young players that at the time didn't have a lot of leverage. Oh, how things have changed over the last day or so.
Yeah, and I really liked the offseason they had. I think I was on the show either with you or Remus, and I said that they were one of my favorite off seasons because even though they signed Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner, those are like 1-year deals, 2-year deals, and there are players that are going to help in their middle six. They have a great forward core, but yeah, you got to take care of your RFAs first, and I applaud the St. Louis Blues for doing this. I really love when teams offer sheet, get aggressive, make your team better. The Oilers don't owe you anything, and they're in a tough cap spot, not you. So go get their young RFAs who they refuse to pay and go $1 under the amount so that you can get the right compensation. Like, this is just a great move by the Blues. I love it. And yeah, the Oilers, I mean, I loved their offseason. Now, depending on who they bring back of Holloway and Broberg, I think it'll most likely be they bring back Holloway. Broberg is a St. Louis Blue, but man, I still like their offseason. They still had a really good offseason, but it really hurts to lose 2 first-round picks because you didn't sign those guys first. And I don't know, would you rather have Philip Broberg at that price tag without the second-round pick or Victor Arvidsson? That's the question that the Oilers asked and said Victor Arvidsson clearly because they didn't think this far ahead in this process. And I think it's going to sting for them, but I still really like the Oilers and their contracts they signed
got cocky. I think they just got a little cocky and just thought that, okay, well, this isn't going to happen. And this is why I bring up the agents, because if I'm the agent, I was pissed off watching what had happened and how squeezed they were at the end. Like, unless you've got a trade popping that you're getting rid of the nurse salary or something, how were you thinking this was going to happen? Well, you're just going to have to jam these guys with league min contracts or $1.2 million when there's obviously people out there willing to pay significantly more. It really is fascinating. And, as Mike said, we are here for it. But I mean, the simple reason why we don't see more of this is that most teams aren't in a situation that allow themselves to be pilfered without really a simple, we're matching and other options to do it. So how they maneuver through this is going to be very, very interesting. I don't see a way they can keep both of those players. And, the Winnipegger in me would love to see a guy like, I'm sort of mixed because I'd love to see this blow up on them. The problem is that if it does, they'll be playing in the Jets division for the St. Louis Blues. So maybe they lose the player and then he's way overpaid with St. Louis and it doesn't work out and it ends up poorly for both teams. I mean, that I think is the best case scenario from where we sit here in Winnipeg. Yeah. All right. Listen, we're going to get to the Coolbet lines in just a minute. As I mentioned, we do have a little Assiniboia Downs going on tonight, and just perusing through the picks. We'll probably tweet these out later. I do like a 267 triactor in race number 2 with Captive Kitten, Gallant Oak, and Mr. K. We're gonna go with that one for our triactor today. Looking at Sneaky Situation, the favorite in race number 3. Good old Ronaldo Cumberbatch on the horse. Moving over to race number 5, we've got a real heavy favorite in Lady Cop. I think we're going to probably put Lady Cop in on maybe we'll go with the exactor box with double-barreled Elite, another favorite that I do like. And then the other final pick today, we're going to go into a massive race 7, which originally had 12 horses. It is now down to 11. But my old favorite, Woke Joke, coming off a win last week in its last race on July 30th, is 10-1 right now. I'll get Woke Joke with a little win and maybe tie it up into a big triactor for that final race. Again, Assiniboia Downs tonight, 7:30. Best place to check them out is to do it in person down at the Downs. But HP, I bet if you do want to bet like Remus and I do remotely for what's going on at the track. All right, let's get to the Coolbet lines. And Connor, we're on a bit of we're trying to get the mojo back as we get ready for NFL season. This is the time to sort of get that confidence growing. We've been hitting some baseball games just now that the Olympics is over. There's not a whole lot going on elsewhere. And we hit our double play last night, myself and Dusty, so we're doing it again today. The Houston Astros money line against the Tampa Bay Rays, and the San Francisco Giants against the Atlanta Braves. That one is plus 222 if you do it manually. And you'll see at the top. Actually, Andrew, if you want to just hit sports and go right to the top, like on the main page, you'll see at the top the combo cards. Right there is the double play, right next to the game of the day. And that's boosted up to plus 251. So the guys are very nice to us. We throw a couple picks in. We put them together on the double play, and they give us a nice one. And the folks from the DGen Den, which is the Discord for the Lock Shop, have the Yankees minus 1.5, the Astros as well, and the over 8.5 in the Orioles Nationals game. That one's boosted from plus 797 to 9-1. And there's one other great one, a FedEx St. Jude's Super Boost. This is pretty chalky, but if you like Scotty Scheffler to be in the top 10, Rory McIlroy in the top 20, you can bet up to $20 at plus 109 for that. You know, just while I'm mentioning the FedEx St. Jude, we did put together our picks for the event, and we're going with a pretty juicy parlay. We've got Rory McIlroy in the top 10. We've got Russell Henley in the top 20, and we're going to add in Victor Perez, who's 70th of 70 in this tournament, but is the guy that needs to play the best to stick around. He finished with a 63 in the Olympics, finished 4th just off the podium. I don't even mind him as a long shot at 125-1, to be honest, to win the tourney. But we're going to take him on that. You can find that in the exclusives under the golf exclusives, along with everything else Patty's got. But as far as CFL lines go, here's the update. The Stamps are now 3.5-point favorites at Coolbet on the Ottawa Redblacks. We've got the Montreal Alouettes laying a point on the road in Saskatchewan against the Riders. And, you know, this should be Fajardo Harris. The return of Cody to Saskatchewan as a Grey Cup champion. I'll be watching that one on Friday night. Saturday is the Elks and Ticats. Elks, 2-point favorites on the road. And they've come a long way since being 0-7 a couple of weeks ago. Still waiting to hear about Trey Ford's status for the game. And then a 4-point swing since yesterday morning when the Bombers were 3-point favorites against BC. A little different with Nathan Rourke in the mix. Bombers now 1-point underdogs and minus 102 on the money line. We will do our CFL picks tomorrow in the Lock Shop, and then crank out another partner parlay. I'm still choked that we missed by 0.5 point on the over in that Elks BC game on the weekend. But we move on to this week. Had a nice win yesterday in the double play. It's all there at coolbet.com. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST, 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Connor, what do you think about this Bomber Lions game? I mean, it went in a lot of a lot of different ways. Not different way. Put it this way: it did a 180. The Lions down in the dumps, losers of 3 in a row. Bombers hot, coming off the bye. Now all of a sudden Nathan Rourke is back. I mean, do you have a different feel about this game now that Rourke is there instead of Jake Dolegala? Who wouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I said before, like 2-6 with the home and home against BC. I was very, very worried, but then they won in such a convincing fashion that even if Vernon Adams was back for this game, I had a good feeling about it. With Nathan Rourke, like, I know he was playing football, he's playing with the Falcons, like, he's going through training camps. He's not a guy who's coming off the couch here. But like he's showing up to practice today, and then he's going to play Sunday. I mean, he's played with the Lions, he probably knows most of the playbook. I don't know if it changes that much for me, Rourke on a short week versus a healthy VA. Maybe a little bit more to the Lions side with Rourke because he has that experience and he's been playing in the NFL. And if he gets a scaled down playbook, he can do amazing things with that. So I definitely feel worse about it. But man, I'm just excited to watch. Like, this is going to be a super fun game. It's a Sunday night. I know Remus probably would have preferred the Saturday at 9 p.m. He likes those late Saturday games, but I don't mind the Sunday games as someone who, the Gold Eyes will play at 1. And then I got lots of time to get home and watch the game with my peeps. So it'll be great. I can't wait. And I'm excited to see how maybe complex the Lions play things with Rourke just coming in today and playing in a few days.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm a little choked that of all the times this season that the Bombers are playing on a Sunday night, it's the night that I'm doing this event with Kevin Cheveldayoff at Breezy. But the game will be PVR'd. We will be paying attention to it, and we'll get it in a little bit later on after everything happens. Listen, I wanted to get this to you, and we've got a couple minutes here. We were talking earlier about the upcoming National Football League season, and we spent a lot of time talking futures. We'll continue to do it in the lock shop over the next couple weeks. In case you hadn't been looking, the Chiefs are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. It's actually gone down from plus 550 to plus 525. And your Niners plus 625. Connor, just as far as the Niners go, and I know we touched on this a little earlier right now. Everyone's talking about Brandon Ayuk. I kind of think the biggest question mark there, I think they'll be fine with or without him. It's Trent Williams.
Yeah.
People, we live in this fantasy football world where we're always talking about the guys that are on the box scores and whatnot. Left tackles are so important right now, and to me, that's the most problematic issue around San Francisco. Not what compensation they might get for Brandon Ayuk if he leaves.
Yeah, and the best left tackle in football, maybe as well. Like Trent Williams, kind of undisputed. The NFL Top 100 list would agree. And he's 36 years old, I believe. So that's an interesting negotiation because how much longer he wants more guaranteed money. So does Brandon Ayuk. Like, this is it's all about guaranteed money in the NFL. If you get hurt, your career could be over. So guaranteed money, go get your money. I get it. But a 36-year-old left tackle, how many years are you going to tack onto this contract with guaranteed money when you got to pay Ayuk? You got to pay Brock Purdy next season. You're already paying top of the market to Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. So, the bill is coming due for the 49ers here. They got to pay everyone at the same time. And this is kind of like a last dance this season. Last year of Purdy on his rookie contract. George Kittle's on the wrong side of 30. Deebo Samuel's getting to 30. Trent Williams, I just said 36. So maybe they can extend this window a few more years. But with this core of players, this is really, last year was their best chance. And then this year is their second best chance, let's say. And we'll see how things shake out. But yeah, Ayuk and Trent, they got to figure that out, or else starting without those two guys week 1, you would see a lot of the odds that we just went through and the Super Bowl odds, you would see those plummet because those are two really key pieces to the offense.
I'm just looking at the odds for the division winners, and it seems like people have finally, after 8 straight AFC West, realized that death taxes and the Chiefs winning the AFC West, they're minus 303. And I mean, a couple of these years, like the last couple of years in Super Bowl seasons, we've been getting them at even money, plus money. I mean, it's been nuts. But anyways, I mean, it's the Chiefs, then the Chargers, Vegas, and Denver way back. The Niners are the next biggest favorite to win their division at minus 208. But here's my question for you. Every year, without fail, there's a team that goes from worst to first in their division in the National Football League. Last year was the Texans that sort of burst onto the scene. So I'm going to give you the long shots in each division. AFC East is the Patriots at 22-1. AFC North is the Steelers at 6-1, right behind the Browns at 5-1. It's kind of like a little skewed. It's Baltimore and Cincy, Gap, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. The Titans in the AFC South, 11-1. The Broncos plus 1550 in the AFC West. Commanders 10-1 in the East, NFC East. The Vikings 11-1 in the NFC North. The Panthers 10-1 in the NFC South. And the Cardinals 12-1 in the NFC West. Are any of those 8 teams, do you have an interest at a long shot wager to win the division? There's a few that I can tell you just straight up aren't happening. New England,
Right. Yeah.
Denver, probably the Commanders, considering the rosters of the Eagles and the Cowboys. I was actually getting a little horny for the Vikings on the weekend. I'm not going to lie. I was like, this is great.
Well, not
JJ
anymore.
McCarthy's awesome.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Like, I kind of feel like I mushed him. I was all fired up about how good he looked and bet him to be rookie of the year. And then he immediately gets a knee injury and he's out. It could be weeks. It could be months. But that's
They
really
said today it's
Minnesota.
months, actually. He's done for the year. He had the surgery today, and it's the bad one. It's not the weeks, yeah. So hate to burst your bubble, but yeah.
Well, that sucks. It's slinging Sammy Darnold time in Minnesota for the entire season. And listen, you know what that is brutal for? Justin Jefferson owners in fantasy football.
Yes.
Like, I'm not saying Darnold can't do it, but at least if you have both of those guys, knowing that JG's going to play at some point, there could be a great connection between the two. That's really, really disappointing because, man, he looked great in training camp. I thought he was going to be able to make an impact in his rookie season. I'm sure you're not interested in the Cardinals at 12-1. The NFC South is the division that's always fascinating to me in that it's just a bunch of meh. The Falcons are minus 110 right now, and I know they've got Cousins coming in and Michael Penix, but you know, Tampa had the great season last year. Was that a mirage? The Saints, I mean, with Derek Carr, they were the team that was supposed to win it last year. Maybe this is their year. And I know the Panthers were absolutely brutal last season, but I think a very mid team is going to win this. Like, maybe it's the 10-1 on the Panthers, or no one's talking about the Titans for obvious reasons. They did get Calvin Ridley. They've got their new head coach from the old Brian Callahan from the Niners. I'm having a hard time making a strong case for any of these teams. I think, honestly, the team that makes the most sense is the shortest one, and that's the Steelers at 6-1. And that's a meat grinder of a division. But the Steelers have a great defense. They've got 2 quarterbacks there on really cheap deals, which are going to allow them to do some other things. Like, do I think they're going to win the division? Probably not. Baltimore's really good. Cincinnati's good. The Cleveland Browns are no joke. But, and again, we'll look back at this in a month and see the Titans at 4-0 or something like that going, we should have known.
Right,
but
yeah.
It's not an easy exercise identifying that team every year. But lo and behold, there's going to be one of them. Remember this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it is the Steelers. I mean, Mike Tomlin just pumps out winning season after winning season. So betting on that is not a bad idea. And the Titans also are interesting if you believe in Will Levis taking that second-year leap. Maybe them. They're in a little bit of a worse division, and I can't see the Texans losing that division. Like, CJ Stroud is a superstar, and he's got more weapons this year. So it really an injury to go right, I think, for one of those to hit. You need like one of the massive favorites to lose a key player. But I see the worst to first question. I know the Bears aren't. Now it's the Vikings at the shortest odds, and I'm sure they were even before the McCarthy news. But I like the Bears as a team. They were the worst in that division last year, even though the Lions are there. They were in the NFC title game. Jordan Love with the Packers, highest paid QB in the NFL now. They're on the ascension. And then the Bears, they just drafted Caleb Williams, but I really like their defense down the stretch last year. Their offense, they have a lot of weapons there. If Caleb Williams hits right out the gate, I don't see why they can't be the surprising worst to first team in the NFL. And I saw their odds were plus 315 to win that division. But hey, if you believe in Caleb Williams and he's a highly touted quarterback prospect, they've got the pieces around him to do it. So I'm excited to watch them this year.
He was, I think, he did 2 drives in the first preseason game, was 4 of 7 for 90 yards. He had like a 60 odd yard touchdown as well. I was listening to, what was it, The Ringer last night, the Ringer fantasy podcast. And the guys were all saying, got a lot of, and this is somewhat ironic because of what the team we're talking about, but there was a lot of what reminded them of Aaron Rodgers, which is a pretty nice comp for a player coming in at the quarterback position. You mentioned the Texans. Here's 2 over-unders on Stephon Diggs. Over-under 900 yards receiving for the season. And I'm going to add my own hustler prop. Over-under week 6.5 that Diggs has a tantrum because he's not getting enough balls in that stacked wide receiver room.
Under on the yards and over or shorter on the tantrum. That's what I'll go with. But no, there's so many weapons in that offense. Like 900 yards. I know Stephon Diggs is a great receiver and he has been for a while, but he's getting older. The 2 receivers that are there, Tank Dell and Nico Collins, they're younger. And I love Tank Dell. I love what he did last year before he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. Nico Collins is a great receiver as well. I even if CJ Stroud, I mean, I guess the path for that is CJ Stroud passes for 4,500 yards or 5,000 yards or something crazy, and Diggs gets 1,000. But I don't know. I think he's the number 3 in that offense. I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he won't line up at 3, but I think that's going to be huge for Dell. I'm a high on Dell when it comes to fantasy, and I mean, Collins' total is 1,000 yards for the season. I'm just pulling up the CJ Stroud numbers. 43.25 is his passing total, which is huge. That might be actually the highest in the league. I'm just looking to see if there's any other quarterbacks that are. Oh, Mahomes 4,500. That makes sense.
I think Tua was the league leader last year. If you want to check him too, with all those weapons in the Dolphins offense, Hill, Waddle,
Tua's 40. Tua's
OBJ now.
4,050. Trevor Lawrence 38.5, and then for CJ Stroud, the touchdown number, which I actually think I still like, 26.5. That is a very fun team. Caleb Williams, while you asked, the number for him on passing touchdowns is 22.5. It's even money to the over, and the yard Caleb Williams is 3,400. You know that the Bears have never had a 4,000 yard passer ever.
Yes, I do.
Team's been around forever. Well, anyways, we'll focus in, next week and, during the days that Ream's away, we'll kind of spend 10 or 15 minutes focusing in on, a few other maybe particular teams or divisions or some thoughts and certainly some players, because as we're all getting ready for fantasy drafts right now, going to Coolbet and looking at the odds, just the totals on like the over-unders, assuming healthy players, and again, injuries will blow up your bets in your fantasy team in a heartbeat. Just ask Viking fans. Sorry about that, to bring that up, everybody. But it is a good, if you're kind of trying to decide between 2 guys, no one knows this better than the guys that are laying the odds and that are at risk for it. So it's a nice way to give yourself maybe a little bit of a backup as to what you're thinking. You back at the ballpark tonight?
Back at the ballpark tonight. If you're unable to make it, I'll be running the stream graphics. So if you're watching the stream and a batter's coming up to bat and you see his stats pop up, that's me. I'm putting up the graphics there. So I'm excited.
How's the chat?
It's supposed to be another great night. No chat, no stream chat. Maybe we should stream it live to YouTube. That's a good call, but no, I'm excited to watch the game tonight. It's another big one. As I said, Sioux Falls are battling for first. Great night, great weather. And I don't have to stand there and dodge foul balls all game. I can just do the stream graphics. So I'm
eat your 3-piece chicken that you won last night by catching that foul ball.
There's nothing better than this, Huss. Free 3-piece chicken meal, first place team, gorgeous August night. Doesn't get any better.
Let's go. Tomorrow, Rourke's going to jump on. We will check in on the Bombers as they prepare for the BC Lions and Nathan Rourke on Sunday. And we'll also look to check in with our pal Andrew Collier and the Winnipeg Gold Eyes as we get ready for a big weekend as the team looks to solidify their hold on first place. But a big first place battle tonight. If you don't have any plans, get on down to the ballpark, 6:30 start. Connor, great stuff as always. Awesome having you in the program. Shout out to Andrew, killing it today, doing a great job getting us on. Once I could hear you guys, we were golden. And we even had the little curveball with Dusty having to sub in with Tommy, and it all went through great. So as of right now, Remus is busy with Benji and the gang right now. So hopefully he's calm, knowing that we got through a day without him. We'll try and make that happen for 2 more days this week and a few more later on this month as we finish up August. Have a great one tonight at the ball game. Thank you very much to Andrew Z for helping us make this all happen. Shout out to everybody in chat, everyone listening on the podcast, and of course, all of our sponsors for making this show happen each and every day. Enjoy your evening, everybody, and make sure you're back with us tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on YouTube, later in the afternoon in your podcast feed with another action-packed, award-winning episode of Winnipeg Sports Talk. For Connor Hrabchak, I'm Andrew Paterson. Catch you tomorrow on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.